They don't want you here tonight. I thought you should know.
Who's they? And you're telling me this because...
Because the last time someone like him started whispering about who belonged and who didn't, folks ignored it. You telling me this? Either you wanted me to leave or you wanted me to stand up.
And I don't leave when I'm told not to be somewhere.
I wanted you to be ready. I didn't want you to get blindsided. You think I'm stupid for saying something?
No. I think you're the only one around here who still remembers what decency looks like.
Clarence Donald thought it was just another quiet Friday night dinner until his new waitress leaned in and whispered 7 words that turned his meal into a moment he would never forget. Every Friday, like a routine, Clarence Darnell pulled into the same narrow parking space at Jean's Roadhouse Grill, just off East Duran Avenue in Savannah. His old Ford Ranger truck coughed twice before going quiet, and he stepped out wearing jeans he had pressed that morning. A dark red flannel shirt buttoned all the way up, and his army hat tilted slightly forward, like a man who kept watch even during dinner. He didn't need a menu. He never had. Medium rare ribeye steak, house fries, collard greens, and a glass of iced tea with 2 sugars and no lemon. That was Clarence's routine, and in this town, routines mattered. Inside, the air smelled of mesquite smoke and cooking beef. The floors creaked under heavy boots. Local people filled the booths. Workers with sunburned necks, retired school teachers, the occasional police officer on break. Folks didn't make a fuss about Clarence. They just gave him space the way you do with men who've seen more than they'll ever say. He always chose the booth by the window. From there, he could see both the parking lot and the entrance. It was a habit, a reflex, whatever you wanted to call it. How it came from years of watching your own back when nobody else would. Tonight, though, was different. Not in any big, flashy way, just different. The usual waitress, Bernice, the one with the loud bracelets and louder voice, wasn't there. Instead, a new face approached. She looked mid to late 20s. Pale skin, ponytail pulled tight like she was trying to hold herself together. Her name tag read E. Carver. She clutched her notepad like it might bite her. "Hi there. I'll be taking care of you tonight," she said, smiling with effort. "You ready to order?" Clarence looked up slowly. "Medium rare ribeye, fries and greens. Tea, sweet," she blinked. "Yes, sir." Her pen moved quickly. He wasn't expecting more. She was already turning when he added, "No lemon." She paused, nodded, scribbled, and turned back toward the kitchen. It should have ended there. But 5 minutes later, she came back. Not with drinks, not with anything. Just stood there beside the table, glancing back toward the kitchen. Sorry, what was your name?" "Clarence." She leaned in slightly. "Clarence, can I ask how long you plan on staying tonight?" His eyes narrowed just a little. "Long enough to finish my meal." There was a pause. Her lips parted, then shut again. Then she looked straight at him, voice barely above a whisper. "They don't want you here tonight." It hit like a dropped fork. Clarence froze. Not dramatically, just a slight shift, the kind that meant his mind had switched from relaxed to ready. He looked at her slowly. "Come again?" She glanced around. The restaurant still buzzed with Friday night noise. Laughter from a booth, clinking silverware, some classic rock low in the background. She leaned closer. "They don't want you here tonight. I thought you should know." Clarence's fingers curled slightly around the edge of the table. His tone stayed even low. "Who's they?" But she didn't answer. Not yet. Her eyes flicked toward the corner of the room, just past the bar where a large booth sat tucked in the shadows. 4 men sat there, one with a bald head and tattooed arms, another with a goatee and a tight-lipped smirk. The other 2 looked like they belonged in hunting ads. Their eyes, hard to miss, were already on him. Clarence turned back to her. "You sure that warning was meant for me?" She didn't smile. "I don't joke with tables." He sat back, arms now crossed. His tone dropped even lower. "How long you been working here?" "Week and a half," she said quietly. Clarence let out a breath through his nose, slow. "And you're already getting messages for other people." "Not messages," she said. I overheard something. Thought you'd want to know." He didn't say thank you. Not yet. He didn't say anything. Just looked at her like he was trying to read the years she hadn't lived yet. But something in her eyes told him this wasn't about rumors. It was personal. Clarence didn't blink for a good few seconds. He just stared at the young woman standing in front of him, trying to decide whether she was someone worth listening to or someone caught up in something she didn't understand. She didn't look away under his stare. That told him more than words could. The tea finally arrived. She set it down carefully. The ice clinked against the glass like it was nervous, too. Clarence took a slow sip, never taking his eyes off her. "You want to sit?" he asked calmly. Emily glanced toward the kitchen, hesitated, then pulled out the chair across from him and lowered herself down fast, like she wasn't sure how long she'd have. "I'm not supposed to be off the floor," she murmured. "Then talk fast," Clarence replied, keeping his voice just above a whisper. "What exactly did you hear?" She twisted the corner of her notepad, eyes darting to the side again. They've been coming in the past few weeks. Same group. Always that same booth. Last Friday they left a note on the table. Said certain types of customers make the place feel tense. Clarence raised an eyebrow. Certain types? She gave a tiny nod. That's what it said, no names. Just that phrase. He leaned in a little. What makes you think they were talking about me? Emily swallowed. Because they said the man who always wears a flannel shirt and a veteran's cap, the one who sits by the window. That was enough to push a silence between them. The restaurant kept moving around them. Chefs shouting orders, a toddler laughing near the back. Someone dropping silverware. But at this table things had gone still. Clarence spoke after a pause. And Jean's okay with that. She looked down. I don't know what Jean thinks. I've only met him once. His son Travis runs the place now. He doesn't say much, but I know the guys at that booth. At least one of them. We went to high school together. He wasn't exactly subtle back then either. Clarence narrowed his eyes. What's his name? She hesitated. Logan Mercer. He was a senior when I was a freshman. Got into trouble a lot. Vandalism, fights, all of it. Just disappeared from his record. Family had money. Clarence sat back slowly. And now he's the kind of man who leaves notes for management. Emily nodded once. He runs a local contractor business. Half his crew eats here. Tips heavy. Brings people in. And you're telling me this because... She looked him dead in the eye. Because the last time someone like him started whispering about who belonged and who didn't, folks ignored it. And then it got louder. I don't want to wait until it gets loud again. Clarence let that hang in the air for a second. He respected the courage it took to say something like that, especially out loud. But he wasn't new to this. Not by a long shot. You afraid of him? Clarence asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she folded her hands tightly in her lap. Then said, I'm afraid of where this kind of talk goes. And I'm afraid nobody else here is going to say a darn thing about it. He looked at her hands. They were shaking. Then he glanced back at the corner booth. They were still watching. All four of them. You say Logan knew you back then? He asked. Emily nodded. He used to mess with me. Small things. Locking me in storage closets. Starting rumors. That kind of thing. He moved away for a while, but now he's back. And somehow he thinks he owns this town. Clarence nodded slightly, as if a puzzle piece had just clicked. He leaned forward again, elbows on the table, voice firm but not raised. What do you want me to do? Emily blinked. I don't know. Because you telling me this, either you wanted me to leave or you wanted me to stand up. And I don't leave when I'm told not to be somewhere, she breathed out. The kind of breath that came from holding something in for too long. I wanted you to be ready, she said. I didn't want you to get blindsided. Clarence picked up his glass again, took a sip and set it down with a quiet tap. Well, I'm ready now. But there were still 5 tables between him and the truth, and 4 pairs of eyes watching his every move. Clarence didn't move much, but his senses had sharpened. He'd been through enough patrols in the desert to know when tension in a room started shifting, when something beneath the surface wasn't right. And he could feel it now, not just from the booth in the corner, but from the bar to his left, where the bartender suddenly stopped polishing glasses and just stood there, eyes flicking between him and Emily. Even the busboy sweeping near the back had slowed down. Emily stood up. She looked like she was about to say more, but someone in the kitchen called her name. It wasn't a request. It was sharp like a warning shot. She gave Clarence a tight glance, then turned and walked fast toward the kitchen doors, disappearing behind them. Clarence stayed put. Back straight, gaze level. He didn't go for his phone, didn't grab his keys, just sat calmly, like he was the only man in the room who didn't need to pretend. 10 seconds later, he heard the chair across from him scrape. A body eased into it. He didn't look up yet, but he knew who it was. I see you still like that corner table, a voice said. Low, smug, southern. Clarence lifted his head. Across from him sat a man in a grey shirt with rolled-up sleeves, a buzz cut too tight for the decade, and the kind of grin that didn't reach the eyes. Logan Mercer, Clarence said. Logan leaned back like they were old pals catching up over drinks. Heard you come here every Friday. Figured I'd introduce myself since we're both loyal customers. Clarence didn't return the smile. Can't say I was waiting on that privilege. Clarence tilted his head. Speak up to who? To the folks who run this place, folks who care about their regulars. I mean, let's be honest, the place has a certain atmosphere. You change the ingredients too much, and the flavor changes. Know what I mean? Clarence stared at him. I know exactly what you mean. Logan kept smiling, but his fingers tapped the table. Now, you don't strike me as dumb, Clarence. You're ex-military. You know about systems, order, chain of command. I know about pushing back when the orders are garbage, Clarence replied. You got something to say it plain. Logan's smile faded just a touch. I'm saying this ain't about you personally, but some places just work better when people know their lane. Yours ain't this one. The silence between them now felt hot, like a fuse was lit, but no one wanted to see how long it would burn. Clarence finally leaned forward. "Let me tell you something. I've earned the right to sit where I want, eat what I want, and exist without asking your permission." "Sure," Logan said, still smirking, "but this ain't about the law, it's about comfort, mine, theirs, even hers." Clarence's brow lifted. "Hers?" Logan nodded toward the kitchen. "Emily, you think she came to warn you out of kindness? She's scared. And when people like you make noise, folks like her catch the heat." Clarence didn't respond right away. Instead, he sat back, folded his arms across his chest, and studied Logan like a man scanning for weak points in armor. Then he asked, "What happened to you?" Logan looked confused. Clarence clarified. "You were a punk in high school, then you had every chance in the world handed to you. Now you're sitting here worried about what a 62-year-old man's eating for dinner. Somewhere along the way, you started fearing shadows." Logan leaned forward, voice dropping. "You keep coming back here, and you're going to see what happens when shadows fight back." Clarence stood. Not quickly, not dramatically, just enough to let the table creak slightly under his hand. "You picked the wrong old man," he said. Logan sat still, but his eyes hardened. Clarence turned and walked toward the restroom. Not the door, not the bar. Just quietly excused himself from the immediate tension. But when he returned 5 minutes later, the booth was empty, and Emily was nowhere to be seen. Clarence stepped out of the restroom and paused. The corner booth sat empty now. No Logan, no hunting jackets, no sideways glances, just 4 used napkins, a half-finished plate of ribs, and a single crumpled receipt resting near the edge of the table. Someone had walked away in a hurry. He scanned the room. Nothing seemed out of place. Plates clinked. Country music played faintly over the speakers. Conversations at the other tables carried on like nothing strange had just happened. But Emily was gone too. Clarence returned to his seat by the window. His tea was still sweating in its glass. A fresh plate hadn't arrived yet, which meant the kitchen hadn't started cooking his order. Maybe it was held up on purpose. Maybe someone wanted him to lose patience and leave. Too bad. He flagged the nearest busboy, a teenage kid with curly hair and a dish towel tucked into his apron. "You seen my server?" Clarence asked. The kid looked confused. "Emily? She went out back, I think. Stepped out about 5 minutes ago." Clarence nodded slowly. "Tell the kitchen to bring out that ribeye. Medium rare, fries, greens. Tell him I'm still here." The kid opened his mouth like he was about to say something, then changed his mind and shuffled off. Clarence leaned back in his seat and looked toward the exit that led to the alley behind the building. A small slice of it was visible through the side window, just enough to see part of the trash bin and the red brick wall beside it. Out back. Alone. He didn't like the sound of that. Still, he waited. 5 minutes, 10, no steak, no Emily. And the manager hadn't made an appearance. Finally, Clarence slid out of the booth, dropped a $10 bill on the table for the tea, and walked toward the side door. Outside, the heat clung to him. The Georgia summer didn't care what time it was. The alley was quiet except for a rattling AC unit mounted above the rear kitchen door. Then he heard it. Muffled voices. He followed the sound, stepping carefully over loose gravel and beer boxes. Emily was standing near the rear exit, partially hidden behind the dumpster. She was facing Logan, arms crossed tight, face flushed. Clarence hung back just enough not to be seen. His body angled against the side wall. He didn't mean to eavesdrop, but something told him whatever she was about to say, she hadn't been allowed to say inside. "You said you were done with this," Emily hissed. Logan kept his voice lower, but the arrogance still cut through. "I didn't say I was done looking out for people. You don't know what kind of men those are." That man served. "He's been coming here longer than I've worked here." "And you know what? He tips better than any of your boys." Logan stepped closer. "He doesn't belong, you know that." Emily's voice rose just a little. "Because of what? A seat by the window? A steak? You think the whole world's supposed to revolve around your comfort?" There was silence for a beat. Then Logan's tone shifted. "I could get you fired with one call, you know that too." Emily stepped back. "Try me." Clarence didn't wait another second. He turned the corner, his steps slow but certain, and said, "She won't be losing her job tonight. Not if I have anything to say about it." Logan froze when he saw him. Emily's eyes widened, but she didn't step away. Logan recovered fast. "This ain't your business, old man." Clarence didn't even blink. "It became my business the moment you sat at my table." Logan took a step forward. "You think you can scare me with your stories and your cap?" Clarence stepped between him and Emily. "I don't need stories," he said. "I've lived long enough to know exactly what men like you try to do when no one's looking." "But you picked the wrong pair tonight." For a second, no one moved. Then Logan let out a sharp breath, eyes cutting toward Emily. "This is what you want? Fine. Don't say I didn't warn you." He turned and walked off, muttering something neither of them could quite make out. Emily exhaled hard, like she'd been holding her breath since her shift started. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. Clarence kept his eyes on the alley exit. "Sure I did." But as they stood there in the thick night air, Clarence knew this was bigger than just one dinner. And it wasn't over yet. Clarence and Emily stood in that alley longer than either of them intended. The buzzing of the AC unit above didn't bother them anymore. It just filled the space between breaths. Emily rubbed the side of her arm, the way people do when they're trying not to shake. Clarence finally spoke, quiet and low. "You said Logan used to mess with you. That wasn't high school behavior. That was a pattern." She nodded. "He was cruel, not in the obvious ways, the kind that stays just under the radar. Made sure he always had someone to vouch for him. Football coaches, teachers who looked the other way." Clarence narrowed his eyes slightly. "And now? He's got a company. Crew of about a dozen. Does roofing and remodeling mostly. Jean's son gave him a discount for their jobs, so he started bringing his crew here every week. Pays cash, tips high, drinks light beer, plays the part." "Plays the part," Clarence repeated. Emily looked up at him. "But every Friday, when someone walks in who doesn't look like them or act like them, it changes. One night a black couple came in, sat at the bar. 15 minutes later, Logan's crew walked out, didn't order a thing." Clarence took that in. "Anybody else notice?" She shrugged. "Some of the kitchen staff do, but they don't say much. Most of them are just trying to get through their shifts and keep their heads down." He gave a small nod. "That silence can cost people more than a paycheck." Emily glanced toward the back door. "You think I'm stupid for saying something?" Clarence looked at her squarely. "No. I think you're the only one around here who still remembers what decency looks like." She gave him a sad smile. "That's the thing, though. Decency doesn't pay rent. I've got a 4-year-old. His dad left before he turned 2. I need this job. I need the tips. But I also can't look him in the face every morning, knowing I kept quiet, because it was easier." Clarence reached into his back pocket, pulled out his wallet and placed 2 $20 bills in her hand. "That's not pity, it's thanks, for telling me, and for doing what others wouldn't." She tried to hand it back, but he gently pushed her hand away. "You're not invisible, Emily, and if he ever makes you feel like you are, you let me know." She didn't respond right away, just folded the bills carefully and tucked them into her apron. Then she looked at him, serious again. "He's not done, Clarence. He won't take tonight lightly. He'll come back, and he'll either find a way to make me the problem or make you the example." Clarence looked out toward the edge of the parking lot. He didn't answer right away, but his jaw shifted slightly. "Let him come back," he said. "I fought worse than a man who hides behind steak knives and contracts." Emily gave a soft chuckle. "You know, I didn't think much when I first saw you come in. Just another regular with his routine. Quiet, polite. But now—" "What?" he asked, not unkindly. She shook her head. "Now I think I'd feel safer if this place was full of men like you." Clarence finally allowed himself a small smile. "Then maybe there's still hope for this town." The back door opened suddenly. It was the busboy again, his curly hair damp with sweat. The manager's looking for you, Emily. Said if you're not back on the floor in 2 minutes, you can go home." She wiped her hands on her apron and sighed. "That's my cue." Clarence nodded. "Go on. I'll head back in. Still haven't had that steak." She opened the door and slipped inside, the heavy door swinging shut behind her. Clarence stood there for a moment longer, watching the dark, watching the edge of the parking lot. The threat hadn't left. It had just moved out of sight. But as he walked back toward the dining room, something inside him shifted. He wasn't just staying for dinner anymore. Inside, the restaurant things looked normal again, but Clarence could tell the rhythm had changed. The regular hum of conversation carried on, but the energy felt thinner, like people were trying too hard not to notice something that already happened. His table was still empty. Tea now watered down from melted ice. A new glass sat next to it, this one freshly poured. And sitting in the booth across from his was the manager, Jean's son. Clarence approached slowly, like a man walking into a meeting he didn't ask for. The manager stood when he saw him. Tall, wiry frame, button-down shirt, tucked a little too tight. His name tag read Travis Landry. "Mr. Darnell," Travis began, giving a rehearsed smile. "I just wanted to check in and personally apologize for the wait. There's been a bit of confusion in the kitchen tonight." Clarence looked at him, expression unreadable. "Confusion?" Travis nodded quickly. Yeah, miscommunication. Emily didn't put your ticket in until just a few minutes ago, but we'll cover the meal tonight, on the house." Clarence didn't sit. He stayed standing, eyes locked on Travis. "You sure that's the only thing going on back there?" he asked calmly. Travis's smile twitched. "Of course, what else would there be?" Clarence let the question hang for a moment, then finally slid into his seat. Then I'll wait. That steak better be worth the delay. Travis sat back down, still smiling but less comfortably now. I hear you're a veteran, he said, like he was trying to shift the tone. Clarence just stared at him. You hear that from Logan? Travis hesitated. Well, I mean, it's kind of known you wear the cap. Clarence gave a slow nod. I earned this cap, didn't buy it to make conversation. Travis chuckled awkwardly. Right. Well, we appreciate your service. Clarence folded his hands on the table. Travis, you've got a problem. And it's not just Logan. Travis's face froze for a second. I don't follow, he said. You've got staff who know what's going on. They've heard things, seen how certain customers get treated. And instead of addressing it, you're hoping it goes quiet on its own. Travis's eyes flicked toward the bar, then back. This is a family restaurant, Mr. Darnell. We don't want drama. People come here to relax, not argue over politics or... Clarence cut in, voice steady. This isn't politics. This is basic decency. If that's too hard to manage, then you've got no business running your daddy's restaurant. Travis looked stung, but he didn't argue. Look, he said, lowering his voice. Emily's been through a lot. She's got her baggage. I gave her a shot when no one else would. But if she starts stirring stuff up, I can't protect her. Clarence's tone cooled. That girl doesn't need protecting. She needs backup. There's a difference. Travis opened his mouth, then closed it. Eventually he stood. Your steak will be out soon. I'll make sure it's done right. He walked off without another word. Clarence let out a slow breath and turned toward the kitchen. Still no sign of Emily. He waited, took a sip of the new tea. Still sweet, still cold. 5 more minutes passed before the plate finally arrived. Steak hot, seared just right, fries crisp, greens steaming with vinegar and a touch of heat, and behind it, Emily. She placed the plate down gently, then leaned in. Sorry for the delay. No need to apologize, Clarence replied. You all right? She gave a short nod. Travis talked to me, told me I should be careful what I say to customers, said I might have misunderstood some things. Clarence raised an eyebrow. Did you misunderstand? She looked him straight in the eye. Not even a little. He cut into the steak, slow and deliberate. Then let him be nervous. That's how things change. Emily didn't smile this time, just stood there for a second, like she wasn't sure if she was supposed to say more. Then she whispered, Can I tell you something? Clarence nodded. I came back here last year, moved in with my aunt. Needed help after my son's dad walked out. I hadn't seen Logan since school, but the minute I applied here and he saw me, it was like he picked up right where he left off. Clarence chewed slowly, not interrupting. I tried to stay out of his way, kept to my tables, but he kept watching. Not just me. Every table that didn't look like his people. Clarence nodded slightly. That's not ignorance. That's training. He learned it somewhere and never got told it was wrong. Emily blinked, caught off guard by that. Clarence took another bite and said, The fact that you saw it, named it, and warned me, that means you broke that cycle. She seemed to stand a little straighter. But neither of them could shake the feeling that Logan wasn't gone for good, and Travis was just waiting for it all to blow over. Clarence ate in silence. Not the kind born out of discomfort, but the kind that came when your thoughts got loud and your mouth had work to do. Each bite of steak was perfectly cooked, but the taste didn't register. Not really. He wasn't thinking about seasoning or doneness. He was thinking about lines, and where he was willing to draw his. Emily had stepped away after their last exchange, checking on a table of tourists near the window. Clarence could still see her, her posture stiff, polite smile working overtime. She told him more truth in 20 minutes than some people do in a year. He respected that. But now it was his turn. After a few minutes, he placed his fork down, wiped his mouth slowly, and stood up. The restaurant wasn't loud, but it wasn't quiet either. He knew how to command attention without raising his voice, and he did just that when he walked up to the front counter where Travis stood talking to the hostess. Travis, he said plainly. Travis turned, startled. Everything okay, Mr. Darnell? I hope the meal was... I paid for it, Clarence interrupted, and I'm not leaving without saying what I came to say. Travis looked uncomfortable. Maybe we should talk in my office. No, Clarence said firmly. We're going to talk right here in front of whoever's listening. Several heads turned. Conversations softened. Clarence glanced around. I've been eating at this place for 6 years. Never caused trouble. Never asked for a thing. But tonight I watched a woman half your age show more courage than you've got in your whole body. Travis stepped forward slightly, whispering, You're making this worse. Clarence raised his voice just enough. Not shouting, just clear. And you're worried about the wrong kind of worse. More heads turned now. Even the bartender stopped wiping glasses. Clarence continued. You've got customers in here every Friday treating this restaurant like their own clubhouse. Leaving threats, staring folks down, whispering to management. And you don't shut it down, you feed it because it's easier. Someone near the back muttered something, but Clarence didn't flinch. He looked directly at Travis. You don't want conflict? Then don't serve the kind of folks who bring it with them. Travis tried to play it cool, crossing his arms. This isn't the place for speeches. Clarence leaned forward. Then maybe you should stop running it like a stage. Silence stretched across the room. Then a small sound. Emily, clearing her throat. She'd come up behind them, face pale but eyes steady. I'd like to say something, she said. Travis looked like he was about to object, but something in her face made him stop. She stepped beside Clarence, voice calm. I've worked here long enough to know what's been happening, and I'm not the only one who's seen it. There's been favoritism, harassment, pressure to ignore things, pressure to keep certain customers happy. She glanced at Clarence. He's not the problem, and if standing beside him costs me this job, then maybe it's not one I should have fought so hard to keep. It was quiet enough now to hear a fork drop 3 tables over. Clarence gave her a small nod, then looked back to Travis. You can run your daddy's steakhouse how you want, but don't pretend you don't know what's going on. You're either part of the solution, or you're just another man keeping quiet till the storm passes. With that, he turned and walked back to his table, picked up his receipt and grabbed his cap. Emily stayed standing. Travis, for the first time all night, had nothing to say. As Clarence reached the front door, a few folks looked away. Some stared. One older man near the bar gave a slight raise of his glass. Outside, the night air pressed against him. He paused by his truck, looked back through the glass. Emily was still standing at the counter, no manager beside her, just her and whatever decision she was about to make. But Clarence knew that decisions like hers carried weight, and the only thing heavier was silence. Clarence didn't drive off. He sat in his truck, windows down, arms resting on the steering wheel. The warm Savannah air rolled in slow, heavy with the smell of grease, salt, and summer grass. His radio was off. He needed to think. Inside, the lights from Jean's Roadhouse spilled onto the pavement in soft gold. From his seat, he could still see through the windows, tables, booths, the counter where Emily stood alone just moments ago. He hadn't meant to make a speech. That wasn't his style. But something about Logan Mercer, about the way Travis tried to act like things weren't happening right under his nose, lit a fuse Clarence thought had long gone cold. He was almost ready to start the engine when headlights swept into the lot behind him. A lifted Dodge pickup, dusty white, pulled in fast. No hesitation. Clarence didn't need a second glance. Logan. 3 of the 4 from the corner booth jumped out before the truck came to a full stop. Logan climbed out last, adjusting his belt like a man arriving to straighten something out. He didn't notice Clarence's truck at first. Too focused on the restaurant doors. Clarence stepped out just as Logan reached for the handle. "Do you forget your leftovers?" Clarence said, voice clear. Logan turned. His posture shifted quick, like a man who got caught with his plan half executed. "Didn't expect you to still be here," he muttered. "Funny," Clarence replied, walking toward him. "I figured you'd be gone by now. Pride makes people move faster than they should." Logan's 2 buddies stood behind him, arms crossed, not saying a word. Clarence could tell they were waiting for a cue. He kept walking until there was no more than 5 feet between them. "I told you earlier," Clarence said. "You picked the wrong man." Logan rolled his eyes. "You made a little scene," said your piece. "But that doesn't change how things work around here." Clarence pointed to the restaurant window. "That girl in there, she made a choice tonight. A hard one. Stood up while everyone else was pretending not to see." "Yeah," Logan said. "And what do you think happens when people do that?" "They lose." Clarence tilted his head. "Sometimes, but not always. Sometimes people like you don't get the last word." Logan chuckled, but it wasn't a real laugh. "You think speeches scare me? You think you standing out here in the dark makes you strong?" Clarence took a step closer. "You've had this town in your back pocket so long, you forgot what it means to earn respect. All you've got left is scaring people. That's not strength. That's cowardice with a truck bed." Logan's jaw clenched, but he didn't move. Then one of the men behind him stepped forward slightly. Young, shaved head, thick arms crossed. Clarence clocked him quickly. Nervous energy. Trying to read the room. "You really gonna try this here?" Clarence asked him. "Outside a family restaurant? Lights on, cameras running?" The man hesitated. Clarence turned back to Logan. "Your whole act, it falls apart in daylight. You're not invisible, not protected. And if you ever make that girl inside feel unsafe again, I'll make sure every corner of this town knows your name for exactly what it is." For the first time all night, Logan didn't have a comeback. Just stood there, breathing hard. "You walk back to that truck," Clarence said, "and take your little audience with you. How you can find out what happens when the quiet ones stop being quiet." Logan looked at the others. Something shifted in his eyes. Not fear yet, but uncertainty. Doubt creeping in. Finally, he jerked his chin. "Let's go." They turned. Boots thudding across pavement, truck doors slamming. Engine roaring to life. Tires spun a little too fast, pulling out. Clarence stayed put, arms loose at his sides, watching taillights disappear down the street. Then he turned, walked slowly back toward the restaurant and paused just outside the front door. Inside, Emily was wiping down a table near the window. Alone again, he stepped inside. She looked up. "They came back?" she asked. "Yeah," Clarence said. "But they're gone now." She didn't ask how or why. She just looked relieved. "You all right?" she said. "I'm good," he replied. "You?" "I think I will be." But Clarence knew peace wasn't about one night. It was what came after, and who chose to keep speaking when the noise died down. The rest of the restaurant was winding down. A couple of late diners paid their tabs, and the cook's voice echoed faintly through the kitchen door, calling out the last order of the night. The clock over the counter crept past 9:30. Clarence didn't sit this time. He just stood near the front, scanning the room. He could feel eyes on him. Some curious, others cautious. It didn't matter. What mattered was that Emily had kept her job, and Logan had walked away. For now. Travis came out from the back, clipboard in hand. He spotted Clarence immediately and slowed his pace. No more fake smile. No small talk. He approached quietly. "You didn't have to make that scene," Clarence raised an eyebrow. "You think this was about drama?" Travis didn't answer. Clarence stepped closer. "You've been running this place like nothing's wrong. But everything about tonight proves otherwise. You knew Logan was a problem. You just didn't want to deal with it." Travis shifted, defensive. "He's brought in a lot of business. He's connected. You think I can just ban him and not feel it on the books?" Clarence didn't back down. "What you tolerate defines you, son. That man came into your restaurant making threats, pressuring your staff, trying to decide who belongs. And you still see dollar signs when you look at him." Travis swallowed hard. "It's more complicated than that." "No, it's not," Clarence said. "You either stand for something, or you let men like him turn this place into theirs." Emily stepped out from the back, carrying a tray of silverware, overhearing the last part of the exchange. She didn't interrupt, just listened. Travis looked at her, then back at Clarence. "I didn't ask for this," he muttered. Clarence stared at him a long moment. "Nobody asked you to inherit this place either. But your name's on the door now. That means something, or at least it should." For a second, Travis looked like he might push back, but he didn't. Instead, he leaned on the counter and sighed. "I grew up watching my dad work this place," he said. "He'd come home smelling like smoke and grease. Always exhausted, always proud. He believed this place brought people together." Clarence nodded. "So what would he say if he walked in tonight and saw what it's become?" Travis didn't answer. He didn't need to. Emily finally spoke. "You don't have to fix everything tonight, but you do need to start. Fire me if you want, but I'm not lying about what's been happening. And I'm not covering for anyone." Travis rubbed the bridge of his nose. "No one's getting fired. I need time to figure this out." Clarence shook his head slightly. "You don't have time. The clock's been ticking. All you've got left is a choice." Travis looked at them both. Clarence with his calm fire, and Emily, who had more determination than anyone twice her age. Then he finally nodded once. "I'll handle it," he said. Clarence didn't smile. "We'll see." He turned toward the door. Emily followed him out into the night air. They stood in the lot for a moment. Her arms were crossed, but her eyes were softer now. "I don't think he knows what to do," she said. Clarence shrugged. "He'll learn. Or he'll lose everything trying not to choose sides." She gave a tired laugh. "I'm used to people walking away when things get hard." "You didn't," he looked at her. "I've walked away from enough things in my life. Some I regret. This wasn't going to be one of them." She stepped off the curb, looking up at the sky for a second. "You think it'll change anything?" Clarence paused before answering. "Maybe not right away, but one night like this it can shake something loose." A car pulled into the lot. A couple stepped out. Black man, Latina woman, mid-30s, dressed for a casual date night. They hesitated just a second before heading to the door. Clarence watched them walk in. Without fear, without hesitation, he didn't say a word. He didn't need to. But that small moment, their confidence felt like the start of something new. Even if no one could name it yet, Clarence didn't sleep right when he got home that night. He sat in his recliner, lights off, the hum of the ceiling fan overhead barely registering. His thoughts were heavier than his body, and that was saying something for a man who carried 62 years on his shoulders like body armor. He wasn't angry. He was tired. Tired of still having to explain what should have been obvious. Tired of watching younger folks like Emily stand alone when they shouldn't have to. Tired of hearing the same coded phrases he'd been hearing since he was a boy growing up outside Mobile. And still, he felt something else too, something like pride. Not in himself, but in her. Emily Carver, with nothing to her name but rent, debt, a 4-year-old, and a job that barely paid enough to cover both. She'd chosen the harder path. She didn't whisper behind doors. She spoke when it mattered, knowing it might cost her. He thought about driving back the next day, maybe bringing her coffee, just to say something more human than a head nod and a warning. But he knew sometimes letting a moment settle had more weight than words. 2 days later, Clarence got a call. It was short. "Hey, it's Emily. Just thought you should know. Logan's crew didn't come back this Friday. Travis posted a sign on the door, said this place serves everyone. He said those who don't like it can eat somewhere else." Clarence smiled. Just once, quietly. "Good," he said. "That's a start." Emily hesitated. "You coming in this week?" Clarence paused. "Wouldn't miss it." He could hear the relief in her voice. "Well, tea's waiting." "Toe lemon." They hung up. That Friday, Clarence walked into Jean's Roadhouse Grill at exactly 6:07 p.m. The parking lot wasn't packed, but it wasn't empty either. Inside, he saw families, couples, 2 teenage boys sharing a plate of fries. Nothing dramatic. Nothing showy. Just life. Emily greeted him with a smile. Not forced. Not cautious. Honest. "Your table's open," she said. He looked around and spotted a new sign in the window near the entrance. Simple white letters on black cardstock. "Respect is served here." Clarence took his seat. His steak came out 15 minutes later. Medium rare. Fries hot. Greens seasoned just right. And for the first time in a long while, he tasted every bite. Across the restaurant, Travis stood near the bar, watching the room like a man seeing it with new eyes. Their eyes met. No nod, no small talk. But something passed between them anyway. Something wordless, and maybe still unfinished, but real. When Clarence finished eating, Emily brought over the check. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a crisp $50 bill and tucked it into the leather folder. No note, no signature. Just enough to say, "Keep going." He stood up slowly, straightened his back, adjusted his cap. Emily touched his arm lightly as he turned to leave. "Thank you," she said, eyes steady. Clarence looked at her and said the thing he wished someone had said to him when he was younger. "Don't let them teach you to stay quiet just to stay safe." Then he walked out. The sun was dipping low. That soft orange hour before dusk, when the world looks half real and half like memory. He opened the truck door, sat for a second before starting the engine. And in that moment, he realized something. Sometimes the smallest stand, a conversation at a dinner table, a warning whispered between orders, a refusal to move, can echo louder than the loudest fight. Sometimes courage doesn't roar. It leans in and says what needs to be said. And sometimes all it takes is one voice to remind the room that silence is not the same as peace. If this story moved you, take a second to subscribe. Because stories like these, quiet ones that leave something behind, matter more than we think.